All right, today we're going to work on a cooking project. We're going to work on making elk stew. And we're going to use the shank off of last year's elk. Now, the shank kind of gets a bad rap. Most people will cut it off and just grind it for burger. I do not do that. Shank's some of my favorite meat if it's prepared right. So I'm going to show you what we do to prepare the shank to make some of the best stew you're ever going to eat. So anyway, let's go through the ingredients. So we got 5 pounds of shank. We're going to cube it up. We're going to dice up a couple of small onions, saute them. We're going to use about 2 cups of celery, 2 cups of diced carrots, 3 cups of diced Yukon gold potatoes. We're going to put in a couple of cups of asparagus. And we're going to go with a cup of pepperoncinis with the juice. Now let's talk about some of the other things we're going to put into this. A can of corn, a package of frozen peas. We're going to put in a little bit of the minced garlic, probably a tablespoon of that. 8 cups of beef broth. We're going to put in some pure sea salt, 4 teaspoons of that. We're going to put in a couple of teaspoons of pepper. And we're going to put in a teaspoon of liquid smoke. Now a couple of other things that's a little bit unique is we're going to use an onion soup mix, 1 packet. I've got 1 packet of brown gravy mix. Then I have a couple of these beef stew McCormick mixes that we're going to mix in with it as well for our flavoring. Alright, so the process for the shank is pretty simple. We're going to dice these up into about inch cubes. Now the shank typically has quite a bit of tendon in it. Anyway, you can see that's some pretty good meat. A lot of times it's turned into what's called ossobuco, but I'm going to use this for stew today. So we just dice it up. It's going to make very good meat for what we're wanting to accomplish today. Anyway, the process we're going to use for cooking this is a crock pot. So we'll go ahead and dice all this up and get it in our crock pot. Then we'll be ready to add in our seasoning and get it started. All right, we got our meat all cubed up, nice 3/4 inch or smaller cubes. Let's add our seasoning in here. There's our 2 stew mixes, a brown gravy, and finally here is an onion soup. We don't need to put any liquid in here. This is going to create a lot of liquid as it cooks down. Anyway, we'll put this in the crock pot and we're going to cook it for 8 to 10 hours. Well, this is the main event right here. This is what makes all the magic happen. This has been in the crock pot for about 10 hours and that shank is just melted down and just some luscious juice in there with all those seasoning packets. I did put the pepperoncinis in here and cooked it with this in the crock pot. But okay, we'll add just a little bit of broth in there. Then we'll add in our onions. All right, my onions are starting to do pretty good here. I'm going to add my asparagus in here. I'm going to add my celery as well. And we'll kind of just work this all together for a minute. Then I'll set this aside while I get the rest of my stew up and going. All right, let's get adding everything in here. We're going to add our beef broth, add in our water, add in our pepper, our salt, add in our liquid smoke. Next thing we're going to add is our carrots. All right, those carrots have been boiling for a bit. We're going to add the potatoes in. There's a couple things I'm going to add that I forgot to mention. I'm going to add a can of stewed tomatoes and a can of diced tomatoes. I think that's going to help us out tremendously on some flavor. All right, our veggies have cooked where they're starting to get tender. Now we're going to add our onions and our asparagus and our celery. One thing more to add is our corn. We got peas to add too, but they'll be the very last thing in. All right, and finally the part that's going to make this whole thing pop. That's all that delicious gravy and meat. We'll go ahead and add all that in. We'll bring this up to a boil and let it simmer for a minute. Mix everything good and together, and the only thing we'll have left is to add our thickener to get it the consistency we want it. All right, we did a little flour milk mixture here. We'll stir this in and get this thickened up how we want it. All right, last thing to add, and that's our peas. Anyway, let's dish a little bit of this up. See how that looks. I don't know, I'm saying that looks pretty darn good to me. It's pretty hot still. Let's give it a taste. Perfect. Veggies still have a little life in them. Not too overcooked or anything. The meat's perfect. That's the stew recipe for elk shank. Hopefully when you try this, it'll change your mind about grinding that shank up into burger, because it's awfully good cooked other ways. I don't grind them anymore. The ingredients will be down in the description of the video. If you like it, you know the drill. Anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos from Idaho Mountain Built. Hope you have a great day.